what I think of Twin Peaks and what it truly means. In season 3, at the beginning of every episode, the beginning of the intro, what do you see? You see Laura Palmer's face. You see her portrait, her photo, her school photo. And you might ask, considering the fact that Laura Palmer isn't exactly the subject of this new season, why is she so prominently, why is she the first thing you see? Why is she shown so prominently in the series? When, to be honest, she's kind of a smaller element in this season than she was in the first two, because obviously the overarching question in the first two seasons was who killed Laura Palmer, and it wasn't, and that was the case for the first season, and then the first half of the second season, and then even after the question was answered, it was still kind of all about that. It was all kind of like trying to figure out, not, you found out how it happened, and then the last few episodes were you kind of got into why it happened, and like what exactly is going on underneath the surface of everything that you're seeing here in this northwestern town of Twin Peaks. I would argue that the overarching question of this new season, if there is one, is who is the dreamer? In the movie Fire Walk with Me, during Philip Jeffries' scene, you actually hear, I believe for the first time, you hear the line, "We all live inside a dream." And as he's pointing to Cooper and he says, "Who do you think that is there?" And then at other times in Fire Walk with Me, you see TV static overlaid over the picture. The TV static is going in and out as all of this mayhem is happening. And Fire Walk with Me actually begins with TV static. And as we all know, those of us old enough to remember analog TV, when a TV signal ends at night, when the broadcast day is over, it would cut to static, TV static. And of course we know that televisions are generated by electricity. And what you're seeing when you see the TV static is electromagnetic energy. That is not, you're seeing the lack of a TV signal, and it's just static noise. It's electromagnetic energy. Basically electricity is what you're seeing. But it's...
that's interesting how the series ends, and at the end of each episode, the Lynch and the Frost thing, they also kind of have a broadcast and kind of an electrical thing with that too, with their logo.
Yes. And electricity is talked about. It's a very prominent theme in Twin Peaks. Hawk talks about how electricity is kind of, it's out there in the woods, and it's kind of what almost powers the world, which is true from a scientific standpoint, but it's also true, I suppose, from the spiritual standpoint that he's talking about. And so electricity is looked at. You see like shots taken of electric poles, transformers, things like that. You're given the message that electricity is very important in this world, and that it's very important in general. It's a very important theme in this world. And I have an explanation for why I think that is the case, why electricity is stressed so much in this series. As I said, Laura's face begins, or it shows up, it appears at the beginning of every episode. There's a scene in the lodge, in the Red Room, where Cooper sees Leland Palmer again. And Leland Palmer is sitting down, and he looks up at Cooper. and he says, I believe he says, "Save Laura." Isn't that what he
Or
said?
I thought you said find my daughter or something.
It was either "Find Laura" or "Save Laura."
Yeah.
But I think it was "Save Laura," but I'm not sure. But at any rate, and then he looked very sad. He looked very distressed. He looked like there was something urgent was going on where Laura needed to be found or saved, and and it was clearly something that it was Cooper's mission to do in this third season. In the first two seasons, his mission was to find out who killed Laura Palmer and put whoever did kill her to justice. In this new season, his mission is to basically save Laura, and I'm going to go into what exactly it takes to save Laura in this world that we're living in. You might remember Cooper said at the end of the last episode, just before the very end of the last episode, "What year is it?" That is basically a restating of the question, is it future or is it past? Is it future or is it past is a very pertinent question, because no matter what year it may appear to be in the world that we're seeing in this series, the implication is that what we're seeing is not real, that it is a dream, and that what's happening in the real world is not known, and it's uncertain. And so when they say, is it future or is it past, I believe what they're referring to is the real world. They're basically saying, what year is it? Where are we in time? What's actually going on? The song "No Stars" in I forget the name of the episode or which number episode it was, but that song at the end of that episode, the "No Stars" song, and I've seen other people comment this as well, that it struck them as the most meaningful of all of the song breaks. And it struck me as that too. It had the atmosphere of it, the feel of it, the lyrics themselves. She says, "My dream is to go to that place where it all began long ago, on a starry night." There's a certain night where everything changed. And if you're thinking about Cooper, you may, when you're hearing that, you may be thinking about the night when he went into the Black Lodge. If you're thinking about Laura, you might be thinking of the night she died. But how did Laura die? Do we really know? And do we know if Laura actually did technically die? And I would argue that we don't know that. I would argue that Laura is not actually dead. She is alive to some degree. And she is the dreamer. They basically come out and say this in the episode. I believe one of the episodes is entitled "Laura is the One," and they say Laura is the one in the episode. They're basically coming out and telling you that Laura is the dreamer. There are some elements within Twin Peaks that imply that Cooper is the dreamer, and I believe that this is true as well, but Cooper is the dreamer within the dream. To reference Gordon's dream. Gordon has a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream, where he's talking to this woman and she says to him, we are dreamers dreaming inside of a dream, but who is the dreamer? Or something to that effect. If I'm not getting the quote exactly right, it doesn't matter. The point still stands. I believe that Cooper is the dreamer within the dream. And then when he wakes up, and it turns out he's Richard, he's still he's no longer the dreamer within the dream, but he's still a character in the dream. And the character in the dream is Richard, and Richard is dreaming that he's Cooper. So Cooper was never real. But then Richard isn't real either, but Cooper is the dream version of Richard. And when when Richard woke up, it meant that things were about to come to an end, because when Cooper wakes up and is Richard, then we're one layer up. We're one layer closer to consciousness, kind of similar to the movie Inception. You know, if you've seen the movie Inception, they dream in these layers where they go down one layer and then a second layer, and then they actually make it to a third layer where there is a dream within a dream within a dream. Or a dream within a dream. It's 3 layers down anyway. So, and as you know, if you know about the science of dreams, and they mention this in Inception too, that within a dream, time moves at a different speed than in real life. When you're dreaming, many of us have had dreams that felt like they were hours long, or at least, you know, maybe a half an hour long or 15 minutes. In reality, most dreams are only a matter of seconds or maybe minutes long. I believe nobody's had a dream that was more than 5 minutes long in reality, even if it felt longer than that. And I believe that Twin Peaks is this highly compressed dream. The second to last episode, and when I say that, I mean the last episode before the 2-part finale, we get sort of a glimpse of what might have happened to Audrey. That what Audrey is experiencing is not real. That she's possibly in some kind of hospital. Perhaps she's in a coma. Perhaps she's in some kind of mental institution, and her so-called husband is actually her therapist. But that there's something going on, and she's trapped in this kind of dream world. I think that was the second, and it's hard to say whether any of this was on purpose, because sometimes I wonder if I don't really know much about Mark Frost and David Lynch. I haven't watched a lot of interviews of them and their process, or if they really have an idea of what they, you know, what their work is supposed to mean, or if it's something that they're kind of doing by free association and they kind of purposely make it. I mean, I know that they purposely make it vague, but I don't know whether they actually have something that they're going for that is there for you to see and is right there in front of your nose, if you have the observational skills to and the intuitive skills to notice it. But that episode where Audrey dances and then she, quote, wakes up, and the song before that is the Running Out of Sand song. And I think that's meaningful because, number one, I think that we were shown that glimpse of what's going on with Audrey to kind of get us thinking, to kind of remind us, and the show keeps basically beating us over the head with it, although many people refuse to really take it to heart, that what we're seeing is not real and it's a dream. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it, that what we're seeing is not real. Because how realistic really is what we're seeing? It's not realistic at all. There are very few, I mean, the show Twin Peaks would never be able to be a typical show. It just would not, the characters in the show do not act naturally or realistically. The show kind of jumps from genre to genre, and I actually have an explanation for why that is the case. Like every storyline is almost like a different genre. You know, one is a sitcom, one is a murder mystery, one is sort of a supernatural thing, another one's kind of a soap opera. I actually have an explanation for that as well. And I'm going to make a note of that really quick so that I don't forget it. Okay, so running out of sand. Laura is running out of time. And because Laura is running out of time and Laura is the dreamer, the world of Twin Peaks itself is running out of time. It's in peril. It's in danger of coming to an end. And like I said, it explains the jumbled up plot lines, the distortions, the lack of realism in the show. I mean, the show is very dreamlike. Even the lines in which a dream is alluded to, but not actually, not actually in terms of like people saying that we live inside a dream. In the first season, when Donna says it's like I'm having the most beautiful dream and the most horrible nightmare all at once. Well, the show is very dreamlike, and that's part of its appeal. We've all had kind of these weird, surreal dreams with distorted facts where nothing really makes sense and people don't act normal. And so the realization that it's all a dream actually made me feel better about Twin Peaks, because it kind of excuses a lot of what would in any other series be poor writing, poor characterization, etc. And I'll basically come out and tell you right now that I believe what actually happened. In the last episode, we see some scenes from Fire Walk with Me, and one scene that we see, we obviously we see Cooper, quote, saving Laura. But before that, what do we see? We see Laura and James on the motorcycle, and Laura jumps off the motorcycle at the stoplight, very upset, says, "I love you, James," and then runs off into the woods. What I contend is that the significance of that stoplight, and you'll notice that in the last episode, the scene from Fire Walk with Me is in black and white, and you actually see on the stoplight the words "stop," "slow," and "go" are written on the stoplight, which I do not believe was the case in the original movie. The stoplight did not have lettering on it. It was just the typical stoplight with the red, yellow, and green lights. I think that was purposely put in there, or I keep saying purposely, I don't know, but I think that the fact that it's put in there is meaningful, because it draws your attention. And anything in Twin Peaks that kind of draws your attention, anything in the series, is probably meaningful in some way, or is probably indicative of something. I'm going to tell you now that Laura never died. She was never killed by Bob or her father, Leland, anybody. Everything that happened after the stoplight did not actually happen. The stoplight is where reality ended and the dream began. Because I believe that it's actually Laura Palmer who is in a coma. She and James got into a motorcycle accident at that stoplight. They ran the stoplight, they got into an accident. Laura was badly injured, went into a coma. And everything that we saw after the stoplight was not real, and that's the significance of the stoplight, is that's where the dream began. So that stoplight is actually the place, as in the song, that place where it all began on a starry night.
Aren't stoplights used a fair amount in that series? Like when Richard hit the kid, there was a stoplight. and at other intervals with their stoplights.
Yes, and I didn't even think of that, but that's true. Richard ran over that kid at an intersection. Um, and then when Laura gets off the motorcycle and runs off into the woods, the light turns red, and James actually barrels through the red light, presumably because he's upset about the way Laura's behaving or whatever. But I want to talk about the first in the first episode, the end of the very end of the first episode, the first, which is like a two-parter. You know, it's a 2 hour episode, I believe. Was that right? The first episode was
Yeah,
2 hours.
first few were 2 hours. Some were 2 hour episodes.
Yeah. So uh, we get introduced to James at the tail end of of the first episode, and what's her name, the waitress. And you're gonna have to forgive me. I don't know all of their names, because even though I've watched the whole series, it's not like it's not like it's one of my main. It's not something I'm obsessed with, so I don't know everybody's name and their whole backstory and everything. But she mentions in passing that he was in a motorcycle accident, and then immediately after that, and that he was in a motorcycle accident, and so he's kind of odd now, like he does odd things or he says odd things, and then we cut to that first song, which again has very meaningful lyrics and is very ethereal and very very Twin Peaks ish, where it's the singer, the blonde singer, and yes, I don't know her name in the real world, what artist she is, but it's again the lyrics again allude to being a stranger's dream. Now Cooper and Laura are strangers. They never met, not in real life, because Cooper didn't even come to Twin Peaks until after Laura was dead. So they never truly met. Maybe they met in the dream world, but they're strangers. Cooper's one of the few people in the series, especially in the first 2 seasons, who did not know Laura. Everybody else did. So he is in a stranger's dream. So he's who they're singing about, basically. Now, this song starts playing immediately after the accident is mentioned, which I think is an implication. I believe that Laura's mother is the one who actually killed Laura Palmer. The real answer to who killed Laura Palmer is that her mother did. It was not her father, it was her mother. And I believe that is why the very last thing we see in Twin Peaks, during the credits, is Laura whispering into Cooper's ear and Cooper acting shocked or almost like in disbelief. Because if you'll remember the original series, Laura whispers to Cooper the answer of what actually happened to her, which he forgets and then does not when he wakes up, and then doesn't remember until it becomes obvious what the answer is. And what she whispers to him is, "My father killed me." I believe that what she was whispering, I think that the fact that we see her whispering to him again at the end of the last series is a strong implication that she's whispering something similar to what she whispered when she whispered to him in the first series. What she's whispering is, "My mother is going to kill me." There's a part of Laura, it could be Audrey. I think that every character in Twin Peaks is a different part of Laura's psyche. Every character is a different, almost like a different part of her personality and her consciousness. But I think that part of Laura, at least maybe the part of her, the ethereal part that's in the lodge, knows that she's in a coma. And she knows that she's dreaming, and she knows that Twin Peaks is this world that she created. And what she's whispering to Cooper is, this is all a dream that I'm dreaming, and my mother is going to kill me. So it's basically a case of save Laura, save the world, to make a kind of a short allusion to the show Heroes, Save the Cheerleader, Save the World. In this new season of Twin Peaks, it's basically Save Laura, Save the World. The but of course, being characters in a dream, they're powerless to really save Laura. But of course, they're still going to try because they don't, being dream characters, they don't fully understand the nature of their existence, or perhaps more accurately, the nature of their non-existence. See, I believe that for unknown reasons, Laura went into this coma. Perhaps Laura's father killed himself, or in grief, or something. Something happened that incapacitated Leland, made him essentially powerless. And Sarah, and again, we don't know whether it's happening in what we don't know whether it's future or past. We don't know what year it actually is in the real world. We don't know how much time has gone by. For all we know, it could still be 1989. It could be 1994. It could be 2007. It could be any time. That's why that's the significance of the question: is it future or is it past? It's the uncertainty of what's going on. This uncertainty about what's going on in the real world. Because being dream characters, they can't know what time it actually is, and what they're truly facing. This darkness, this approaching darkness that they seem powerless to be able to prevent. And so what we're dealing with is a quote evil Sarah, and I've read that the fans have actually taken to calling Judy this evil entity that it's implied is inhabiting Sarah, or at least is controlling Sarah somehow. Maybe not inhabiting her fully. Maybe there's more to Judy than just what's going on inside of Sarah. But that this Judy is also being called Mother by the fans. And I think that's very fitting, because I think that Mother is basically the cause of the darkness and the evil, because she is the one who is threatening the existence of this world. Hawk seems to be aware of the fact that he's a dream character, unlike many of the other characters who, many of them don't even seem fully self-aware. Like, for example, the characters in the sheriff's department, the
brothers and sister.
No, they're not. They're husband and wife.
Oh yeah, they were talking about buying furniture, and she didn't understand how a cell phone worked.
Which is ridiculous, absolutely absurd. Yeah, it's not realistic at all. There's no person like that in real life. They seem like these weird, kind of made up characters, like characters you would encounter in a dream or in some really silly story. But Hawk seems to have a bit more reality about him. It's possible that maybe Hawk actually exists in the real world, and that's why he has more reality in the dream world. And he seems to be aware of the fact that he's part of a dream. I'm going to show you something here, and it's on a screen. I'm going to try to make sure it's in focus. This is the symbol. This is one of the versions of the Twin Peaks symbol. You can see it here. And when you look at it, it's those three diamonds stacked vertically like that. Does it remind you of anything else that's a similar shape? Three kind of round shapes stacked on top of each other?
Is it solid, or are there multiple colors?
No, it's all the same color. I would say that it's somewhat reminiscent of a stoplight. I think the symbol is basically basically represents the unreality of Twin Peaks. And admittedly, this symbol is not quite the same as the symbol that was on the map that Hawk is looking at, but it's one version of this symbol. And I believe that this symbol, the one that he told Truman, you don't want to ever know what it means. It's because he knows what it means, and he's horribly burdened by it because he knows, because what it means is that Twin Peaks is not real. They're all living in a teenage girl's dream, basically, coma dream, and that it's all coming to an end soon because they're at the mercy of Judy, aka Mother, aka Sarah Palmer in the real world, who for unknown reasons has decided to take Laura off of life support, basically pull the plug on her, basically deprive her of what? Electricity. Because what's keeping her life support systems going? Electricity. Wow. So that's why electricity is stressed so much in this series, because electricity is what's keeping the world of Twin Peaks going, because it's keeping Laura Palmer alive. It's keeping her neurons firing inside of her head. It's keeping her mind, her brain, creating this intricate, complex. At this point, it's more than a dream, and we don't know how long it's been going on. It could have been going on for 25 years. It could have been going on for only a few years. It could have only been going on for a few days, or maybe even a single day, because like I said, in dreams, dreams often don't last as long as they seem like they're lasting. So, and at first I thought this was kind of unrealistic, because Laura Palmer would have to be kind of a super genius to create this world like this, with all these characters, and to keep it all. But the fact that it's not a typical dream, it's kind of this coma dream, and then just the fact that the human subconscious is capable of a lot more than we often give it credit for. I do think, and especially if the human mind is damaged. I mean, when you look at the kind of delusional worlds that schizophrenics can create, they're very similar to Twin Peaks in some weird ways. They can create this complex set of delusions upon delusions, and upon this hallucinatory framework on the world that doesn't reflect the real world at all, but it all exists in their mind, and they're able to maintain all of it in their mind because their brain is damaged or altered in some way. So the human mind is in fact capable of such things. Even the mind of this high schooler, who is probably some kind of a troubled teen, hooked up with this James character, got into this reckless motorcycle accident and is now in a coma. Even this type of person can create this dream world in their head, especially if their brain has been altered by an accident, some kind of injury. Perhaps Laura suffered from mental illness before she even got into the accident. And so she was delusional already, and she's just living her delusions in her mind in this dream. Her delusions are living on and taking on a life of their own. So I alluded before to the imagery of the TV static. I think it's possible that, and people have been saying for years that the original series defied classification because it had so many different, it straddled so many different genres. One storyline would be this type of genre, another would be this type of genre. I think a good explanation for that, and also a reason why perhaps TV static is featured so prominently in Fire Walk with Me, especially when in Philip Jeffries' scene, where he's basically saying he's not going to talk about Judy, and he's pointing to Cooper and questioning Cooper's existence, basically. The TV static being overlaid over that is an implication that what we're seeing is perhaps being influenced by television. If Laura is in a hospital and she is in a coma, it's very likely that, as is often done with coma patients, the TV is being left on because they often do that just in case the person is somewhat conscious. It's often used as an attempt to get the person out of the coma. And have you ever been dreaming while the TV was on, and had your dreams be influenced at least partially by what you're subconsciously hearing, or what you're hearing when you're in a state of like semi-consciousness and you're half dreaming, half awake? I believe that the reason why the original Twin Peaks, why it was so, why you kept getting these. You remember there was that soap opera that was always on TV, Invitation to Love, which was kind of put in there, and it kind of was like sort of a parody of soap operas at the time. But then also just the fact that the different storylines seemed to have different feels to them, different genres. Some of them were more comedic, some of them were more serious. I believe that was perhaps just the channel being changed on the TV that's in Laura Palmer's hospital room, and that she is able to at least subconsciously hear what's on the TV, and that's influencing what's happening in Twin Peaks. So the TV's on in Laura's room. I think that the idea of Laura being in a coma is very apropos, because if you look at the show, a very common theme in the show is the theme of being trapped. Josie becomes trapped in the wooden knob. Cooper becomes trapped in the Black Lodge. Leland is trapped in a sense because he's possessed by a demon. Audrey is trapped in what appears to be some kind of hospital, mental hospital. They're all trapped and not in control. And I think the reason why this is such an important element in the world of Twin Peaks, such an important theme, is because the very nature of Twin Peaks is that Laura is in a coma, and she's trapped in her own body, and she's creating this imaginary world in this coma dream that is now her only world, the only world that she has left to inhabit. And if she loses this world, it's going to be nothing but darkness, essentially death. So the tree, the arm, which evolved into the tree, he says, is it the story of the girl who lived down the lane? Is it? Now, when you hear this, you think, you might be inclined to think, is this really all about Leland? Is this really all about Laura Palmer? Or is it about something greater than that? But I think that the wording of that statement was vague. It was purposely vague, and it could also be interpreted as, is this the girl's story? Like, is it the story of the girl who lived down the lane? So, is it the story of the girl? In other words, that's another way, it's a more kind of formal way of saying, is it her story? Is this all just some girl's story? Which the answer is, I believe, yes it is. Laura is the dreamer. Laura is the one. So, we live inside a dream. That's not just a general philosophical statement about reality. You know, a lot of people take it that way. They say, oh, what they're trying to say is that we all, like, life is just a dream. And then when you know that David Lynch is really into meditation and stuff, it could be interpreted that way. But I think that it's much more reasonable to just take that at face value and accept the fact that, no, it's not that we're necessarily living in a dream or that life is a dream. This isn't some greater philosophical statement. This is just a statement of truth about Twin Peaks, that it's just a dream. And really, is it all that surprising that it's a dream, considering how freaking unrealistic everything is, and how so much stuff doesn't make sense, and there are times when the facts just end up being kind of disregarded, you know, and the characters act in these unnatural ways that you would not see people act in real life in a million years. Very similar to what you would experience in a dream. We've all had dreams like that, where people just act odd and in ways that don't make sense. Philip Jeffries, when he says, first of all, when he gives them the symbol, or when he's the tea kettle or the giant boiler thing, and he takes that symbol, the Twin Peaks, the owl cave symbol and turns it into a figure eight, or what you might call an infinity sign. And and then there's a point on that infinity sign that he takes them to. It's basically time travel. Takes them back to that point in the world. That basically strengthens the theory that that symbol represents everything that exists in this world. That it represents the fact that it's a dream, and that because it's a dream, everything that happens in this world is in this symbol. So that's why a specific point on this symbol, or on that line, can take them to that place. And it's an infinity symbol because that indicates that everything that happens in this world, that this world is basically it's a self-perpetuating universe, that basically everything that's ever going to exist for these characters exists in this world, and nothing's ever going to exist for them in the real world. So and then when Philip Jeffries much earlier in the movie Fire Walk with Me, when he says when he points to Cooper and he says, "Who do you think that is there?" Now, when I first saw this, of course, because I watched the original series and then I watched the movie, when you see that, you automatically think, "Oh, Philip Jeffries knows that Cooper is Bob," but that doesn't make sense because Cooper hasn't become Bob yet. Cooper has not been possessed by Bob yet. Now, Philip Jeffries could be mistaken and think that he's at a point in time where it's already happened. But that doesn't seem likely, because why would they all be in, I believe it's Pittsburgh? It just doesn't make sense. I think that what he's really getting at when he points at Cooper and he says, "Who do you think that is there?" and then the static appears as he's saying that, as overlaid over the picture. I think that what he's getting at is that Philip Jeffries is a character in the dream who is the part of the dream that knows that Cooper is actually Richard, and that Cooper is the dreamer within the dream. So he's basically creating this extra layer within the dream. He's the character that creates the extra layer within the dream that Twin Peaks is, as the Twin Peaks as we know it is. So he's actually saying that Cooper is Richard. Who do you think that is there? It's perhaps the part of Cooper that knows that he's Richard. Something along those lines. So what he's saying is that Cooper is Richard, and that Richard is going to wake up, and that's going to change everything. And then eventually Laura is either going to wake up or Laura's going to die, and that's going to eliminate everything altogether. It's going to put the final end to the world of Twin Peaks. It's going to be the final basically
chapter.
It's going to be the fall into the dark abyss. And so I told you about the Owl Creek symbol, how certain versions of it resemble the stoplight, which very well may have been the last thing that Laura saw with her eyes as they ran that stoplight and got into the motorcycle accident. Let's see, what else am I think there might be some other things to talk about here.
We'll talk about the light you have behind Cardboard Coop.
Oh yeah, that's a black light, and it's there. Actually, I wasn't going to acknowledge it. I was just going to have it be there, and have the audience kind of take what they would from it. But I think that okay, so basically that takes us to the end of the series, which is kind of the big question. I mean, you basically know what I think happened. Laura's scream indicated her death. At the very end of the last episode, what you hear is they're both looking up at the house. Laura does not recognize it. She's Carrie Page. Cooper is Richard, but he still remembers his life as Cooper, and he still thinks that his life as Cooper is his real life. So that's kind of a nod to the fact that Cooper's not real at all. That Cooper, he was a dreamer, the dreamer within the dream, but even when he's not the dreamer within the dream and just a character within the dream, he's not real. He's not a real person. Now Laura is a real person, and she's the only one. Perhaps versions of these characters exist in the real world. And Cooper actually says the scene where where his face is superimposed over the picture in the sheriff's department. I think that's an implication that he's still dreaming and that he's still the dreamer within the dream. And then he says to everybody, like before he leaves, he says some things will change, and Hawk nods at that knowingly, because he knows that he's the only character there who knows that he's not real. And then knowing that you're not real actually gives you more reality. It makes you more real to know that you're not real. But nevertheless, he's not real, and he knows it. And he's nodding because he knows that once he knows on some level that he's not real, and that he's in some kind of a dream. He may not know that Laura is the dreamer. He may think that Cooper is the dreamer, and that when Cooper wakes up, they'll all be different versions of themselves, and some of them might not even exist. But so it's Carrie, aka Laura, and Richard looking up at the house. She doesn't recognize it. Richard does. And then we hear Sarah Palmer's voice, and she's calling Laura in this like distressed way, like, oh, Laura, like almost like she's crying and screaming. And then Laura screams, and the house becomes very bright. All of the windows like become very bright all of a sudden. It's almost like a power surge, and then everything goes dark. I think that was Sarah Palmer, grief stricken, pulling the plug on her comatose daughter. And that was Laura's death. That was an end to Laura, and it was the final end to any version of her dream, which we know as Twin Peaks. So it's a depressing theory, and it's a disturbing theory. Perhaps David Lynch is anti-euthanasia. It's possible. You awake, dude?
Yeah.
Okay. It's possible that maybe this whole story was an anti-euthanasia message. I don't know, but I believe that that's possibly what happened. It was the grief-stricken Sarah Palmer, and perhaps she was maybe the fact that she's portrayed as evil. She could be portrayed as evil partly because she is the one who is unknowingly putting an end to this world of Twin Peaks and unknowingly killing her daughter, even though she still has some consciousness left. Unknowingly killing her semi-conscious daughter. It's possible that maybe she is pulling the plug on Laura for some bad reason. It's possible that maybe Sarah Palmer in real life is evil. To some degree.
But she's probably not pulling her face off like she did in that one episode.
Right. She's not spiritually evil. She's just a bad person. Maybe there's some kind of life insurance policy to be had.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that. Some kind of and then I'll have to research the euthanasia laws in the state of Washington at different points in history, like 1989 versus how the laws have changed or not changed, but yeah, at any rate, she's portrayed as evil because even if she may not be evil in real life, she is evil to this world in that she is the kind of the ominous force that is threatening to put an end to everything as they know it. So basically, I think that's what happened. I think that Laura finally got to die. Whether maybe that's maybe it's ultimately a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but it was just what happened. And it was actually never her father who killed her, but it was actually her mother, which kind of puts an interesting kind of twist to the whole series, because the original question was who killed Laura Palmer, and we all assumed this whole time because of what was revealed that it was her dad. But what if it was actually her mom? And I was just thinking about all of this, and I was thinking about, okay, during the end credits when she's whispering to him, what if she's whispering something similar but different than what she whispered in the original series? What if that's a subtle suggestion that maybe it's a similar statement, but maybe it's a mirror image of the statement that she's, or an alternate version of what she originally whispered to him, something along the lines of, "You're all part of my dream, and my mother is about to kill me." It's because there's part of her that knows that this isn't all real. She's not completely delusional. She's not completely just like out of it, either, because she there are elements of her that know what's going on, and elements of her who don't, and all of these characters are basically almost like multiple personalities of her, or to put it more precisely, maybe just different aspects of her psyche. And I think that pretty much covers my theory and the reasons why I think it's a reasonable theory. I'm not going to tell you that it's the only theory that could be true. I think there's a lot of evidence for it, and it's what I'm probably going to choose to believe because it's the one that makes the most sense to me. And to be honest, I think it's one of the only endings that it's one of the only theories that makes the ending somewhat satisfying, because it's like, okay, at least you kind of know what happened. At least you kind of have an idea of like, okay, why did all of this stop so abruptly? It's not a pretty picture, but at least it kind of gives you some closure. Whereas a lot of these other theories just kind of, basically suggest that, it's just another dead end basically for the characters, and it's everything screwed up again and has to be fixed again, and probably won't be because the series isn't going to be brought back, and it's just this open-ended thing, where they kind of wrote themselves into a corner, and they're just going to leave it at that because that's just what the show's all about. Whereas my theory, at least, has a certain kind of meaning and poignancy behind it, I would say. And I'm just looking here, message that I sent that where I expressed these thoughts.
What do you think that one room was in New York where it kept shifting and changing and going up, going down, and they killed the two kids on the couch?
Yeah.
What's that tie into it all? Why even bother with that room?
Well, that's the thing. I think that it's just part of the dream. Okay. And I think that there are a lot of things in the show that there wasn't any particular reason for. I mean, obviously that guy was working for some rich guy who had some kind of technology, like some kind of research technology that was able to conjure these spirits somehow from this other world. But I really only see it as part of the dream and not something that had any inherent meaning in itself. Because often when you are dreaming, there are a lot of things in the dream that don't particularly have any point to them. They're just like stuff that's maybe just stuff that happened to you that day, and it's all kind of like a distorted version of things that you had been thinking about that day. So I think that it's just the result of a very creative mind, Laura Palmer's mind. Maybe she was a budding novelist or something, and she had this idea for maybe Twin Peaks was the screenplay that she had been working on, and was preparing to be a screenwriter or a novelist, and maybe it was a series of novels that she was working on or something before she got into the accident. And then it continued to live on in her mind in this coma. Yeah, my theory doesn't explain a lot of the weird shit in the show, and except for the fact that it does just suggest that the reason it's all so weird and messed up, and a lot of it is just dead ends that go nowhere, is just the fact that it is all a dream, which is pretty much what they come out and tell you over and over, even though as we as fans kind of tend to have a blind spot for that statement that they keep on throwing back to us over and over. We just either don't want to think about it, or it's not a satisfying enough answer to us. Personally, I find it a perfectly satisfying answer because it kind of justifies the show's weirdness. I would say it kind of makes it okay, because like, okay, it's not the real world, so anything goes. But yeah, I think that pretty much ties it all up. And let me know what you think, guys.